Let's talk about what was the Hanseatic League. I got this question when I published my first video about Berlin, and I promised I would answer it in one of my future videos, and here we are 1 year later. So the Hanseatic League in layman's terms was a trade agreement of the Northern European Baltic trading cities. However, it's not that simple. To go all the way to the start of the Hanseatic League, we have to talk about the Vikings. And no, I'm not talking about the lovey-dovey Vikings that came to an area, saw women were beautiful, the land was prosperous, and decided to stay. No, I'm talking about the good old Vikings that raided and pillaged the cities and the trading of the Baltic and the northern seas. This, as you would imagine, made the northern trade routes very impoverished and insignificant for trade. However, the Viking raids stopped around the middle of the 11th century and the trade in the northern Baltic seas started to pick up. With this increased wealth in the area, the first to take advantage of this were German merchants who started to migrate along the Baltic and northern seas, establishing small guilds and trading towns. Some of these trading towns still exist to this day, like Visby in Gotland, or Riga in Latvia, or even Berlin. The formation of guilds during the 11th and 12th century was nothing new in Western Europe, as various guilds started to pop up all around medieval Europe. The guilds formed to protect the blacksmiths or jewelers or barrel makers by creating common market through setting of minimum prices and certain production standards for the product the guild made. The early German trade guilds in these Baltic towns did just the same, however not with products but with trade, markets and tariffs. It wasn't until the Hanseatic League, although still not officially called the Hanseatic League at this point, started to form in Lübeck during the 13th century that the guilds started to form into a much larger league encompassing wider areas of the Baltic and German trading towns. With this ever-enlarging league of trading guilds, many more towns around the northern and Baltic seas started to be settled by mostly German merchants. In the simplest of terms, how the settlement worked in already established towns is that merchants will show up and after examining the trading value of the goods in the area and the viability of trade routes from the main city in the area, they would decide whether to form a sort of settlement or not. If they did, they would try to get permission from the local ruler to set up merchant settlement outside of the city walls, although on some occasion also inside. The local rulers usually agreed to this as they knew that the merchant guilds could bring a lot of revenue to the area, which was very true as cities like Danzig and Novgorod became influential trading hubs exactly because of these trading posts. After the setup of these guild settlements in various trading cities or towns, the never-ending battle between the guilds and the rulers ensued, with guilds always trying to get more privileges and lower taxes, and rulers always trying to resist it. This is one of the reasons why the Hanseatic League formed in the first place, as to protect and promote the privileges of guild merchants with the local rulers in the various trade posts and create a sort of early Schengen area of free trade for the merchant cities. The formation of the Hanseatic League itself is usually accredited to the emergence of Lübeck as a trading hub for the outgoing and ingoing shipping in the Baltic Sea, and also its control of much of the fishing in the area. Later in the 13th century, Lübeck formed a partnership with first Hamburg and then Cologne, Lunenburg, etc., and this league managed to get some very lucrative trading privileges in the HRE and also London. Even though we could call this league the Hanseatic League at this point, it wasn't technically officially called the Hanseatic League before the year 1356. The Hanseatic League during the next 3 centuries dominated the trade in Northern Europe, fighting numerous trade posts and inaugurating into its ranks many new towns, cities, merchants. The Hanseatic League charged taxes, levied armies, protected cities, and held meetings with all its members. To a certain extent, you could say it acted like its own country, formed by only trading posts and cities along the northern and Baltic seas. All Hanseatic League merchants, whether living in Britain, Scandinavia, or Russia, abide by German laws and were largely exempt from many of the taxes set on the people in those areas. It is important to understand that the Hanseatic League, continuing into the 14th and 15th century, was a league of merchant guilds around Northern Europe, and even though the Hanseatic League was very much so unique, it still was just as any other trade league, set up on very complicated trade agreements between each guild, trading hub, kingdom, duchy, HRE, free city, and way too much complicated economic history we don't have time to get into. Every tax exemption, trade agreement, German law, etc. has a ton of asterisks attached next to them because it all varied between cities, kingdoms, and trading hubs and was all governed by the Hanseatic League entity. The Hanseatic League started to fall into decline around the 16th century as the emergence of the Swedish Empire and Prussia in the area started to take control of the trade in the Baltic Sea. Plus, the emergence of nationalism created shifting goals for cities in the Hanseatic League, and many cities started to put the issues of their state before the league. The largest hit to the league, however, was the emergence of state-sponsored trading companies that formed during the exploration age, and the heightening power of the Dutch and British merchants in the Baltic Sea. Slowly, many of the cities left the Hanseatic League, and the only ones that stayed all the way till the German reunification in 1862 were Lübeck, Hamburg and Bremen. And that's where I will conclude talking about the Hanseatic League. I hope that wasn't too confusing to understand as I had to gloss over a lot of things, but honestly the Hanseatic League just on its own is very complicated, and that's why it is still studied today by economists to understand how it worked and maybe use what they learned in today's modern markets.